I'm Caleb from Caleb's Aviation. Welcome back to Aviation News. There's a lot to cover today, and I mean a lot, so let's get right to it. First off, Garmin Pilot launched on the web earlier this past week at the time of this recording. Garmin Pilot is already a great feature, part of Garmin Aircraft and Garmin Aviation, and now it has all these additional features that I'm showing you here. If you're interested in seeing more information all about this, I will make a full video about Garmin Pilot and its features, if there's interest. This has a lot of cool features in Garmin Pilot which I really enjoy, including weather forecasting as you can see here for Ann Arbor, or we can go over to Jackson right here, and get this other information. You can now even get NOTAMs and temporary flight restriction notifications, which are crucial for flying, and just more reasons to love Garmin Pilot, now available on the web. Next up in the headlines, a Japan Airlines 737 has hit the runway lights and sustained damage in Tokyo Haneda Airport. However, the damage was minimal. I just thought it's worth pointing out because it's quite rare for aircraft to actually strike these runway lights and get damage. Next up, item I'm sure you've all heard of, the New York City tour helicopter crash, which sadly had no survivors after a helicopter crashed into the Hudson River. This was sad because it was a tourist helicopter flight. By the way, if you're interested in seeing a helicopter flight on my channel, I've done a tour flight over the Grand Canyon. Check out the video linked up above. This was a very sad accident for sure, and staying in the news of helicopters, a penguin has caused a heli crash in South Africa. This is another confusing helicopter accident, and if you'd like to know more about this, feel free to look up the final reports, and I may make a video all about the New York City helicopter crash. Next up, an MU-2 aircraft has crashed in upstate New York, killing a very famous neurosurgeon and his family. The cause of this accident is not yet 100% known, and currently under FAA investigation. There's also a Cessna 310 crash in Boca, Florida. However, this crash was ruled to be pilot error. More than 300 passengers were stuck on Delta Airlines aircraft as two were diverted to Alabama during a big storm in Atlanta, Georgia, their final destination. Both flights were coming out of Mexico and were stuck on the tarmac in Alabama for more than 18 hours, and Delta Airlines said they're sorry for the inconvenience. Next up, a Frontier Airlines aircraft has had a gear failure in San Juan, Puerto Rico. The damage sustained to the A321neo is quite extensive, as seen here. However, there were no injuries to the passengers, which is good. Staying in the United States, a big problem as China has suspended all Boeing aircraft as it's a geopolitical move because of recent US tariff changes amongst the country. The 737 MAX, 787, and 777X deliveries to the country could be impacted, and China suspending all future Boeing deliveries could mark a huge problem for the company, as many Chinese carriers have taken up Boeing aircraft. This could also mark a move to Airbus, welcoming in the carrier to take almost all the Chinese orders. Meanwhile, across the sea in Taiwan, China Airlines have ordered the 777X aircraft, taking up 777-8 freighter and 777-9 aircraft with 23 options. These will replace their large fleet of 747s and 747 freighters in the coming years, and this is good news despite the tariffs. A Southwest 737 has had an engine fire and emergency evacuation, as has a Delta Airlines aircraft. The Southwest 737-700 evacuated in Houston, and luckily all the passengers got away safely. However, this does ring bells to the American Airlines 737 fire in Denver, powered by the same CFM engines. Perhaps they're to blame. There was also a fire by a Delta A330. However, it's powered by very different engines, and the cause of this was due to a turbine failure from a manufacturing defect, nothing to do with the airline. The fire was contained, and no injuries were found. For Pratt & Whitney have ordered further inspections. Mongolia and Hanu Air have welcomed their first Embraer E2 aircraft, which is great. This Mongolian low-cost airline currently flies the E-Jet, and welcoming in the E195 E2 to the fleet is a major change, and another happy foreign E2 customer is always good news for Embraer. A Thai police twin otter has crashed into the sea, unfortunately. This did kill 4 on board, and injured a further on board, who was also very lucky to survive this accident. The cause of this accident is still unknown, however, this was a dramatic accident. Additionally, 2 Delta jets have had their ceilings collapse mid-flight. a Delta Boeing 717-200 going on a routine flight, and a long-haul A330-300 going on another longer flight. The cause of this is still unknown, and many images showed up on social media. A Lufthansa A380 was forced to divert when a missing iPad caused the plane en route from LAX to Munich to divert to Boston. This was due to the risk of fire on board the aircraft if the iPad was not found. The plane later departed several hours late and made it to Munich. Keeping in the theme, Lufthansa have launched their first ever A380 flight to Denver, with the first ever flight by a super jumbo jet aircraft landing in the Mile High City just a couple of days ago. This is exciting for the German carrier, as Munich is becoming a much more popular destination for tourists, especially in the central United States. On April 30th, 2025, the first A380 touched down in Denver. However, Denver is not surprising because it is a United hub, which is also partners with Lufthansa through Star Alliance. This A380 service adds to an existing service by an A350 of Lufthansa, further boosting capacity. Also, talking Munich, if you're interested in seeing more of Munich Airport, check out my recent flight flying with Lufthansa from Frankfurt through to Munich, linked above. Newark Liberty Airport has faced air traffic control issues, which I'm sure many of you have heard about, and it's now been forced to reduce capacity as investigations are underway into the problem. These problems are not super unusual, as airports often have problems with air traffic control systems that are aging. However, people freak out about this more than they should. Also, talking Newark Airport, I flew with Lufthansa on their 747-8 to Newark, and that video will be coming out very soon as well. Hopefully the cause of this problem is found out soon, and the things can be fixed. There is also a celebrity space flight, which isn't really news anymore, but I thought I'd mention because of its oddness. I find it unusual that space tourism is becoming a thing, but I guess it's the world we live in. Also, there was an infamous dead stick landing by a Cessna on a golf course in Santa Monica, California. The pilot performed the dead stick landing excellently, and in my opinion, he saved both the plane, himself, and his passenger, which is the best part of any emergency landing. A landing you can walk away from is a good landing. Well, that's all I have for you in this video. I hope I've managed to cover enough topics. If you're interested to see more about these topics, leave me a comment. 7478 trip is coming next. Until next time, I'll be wishing you blue skies and tailwinds.